Hello, and welcome to our listeners around the world. You're listening to JAMAevidence, our podcast series based on core issues in evidence-based medicine. Today, we're discussing platform trials. I'm your host, Dr. Roger Lewis, Senior Statistical Editor for JAMA and the editor of the JAMA Guide to Statistics and Methods series. I'm here with Professor Steve Webb. Dr. Webb, could you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Roger. I'm an intensive care physician in Perth, Australia, and I'm based at Monash University.
Thank you for joining us. In your article on platform clinical trials, you emphasize the efficient evaluation of multiple therapies. Can you start by giving us a little bit of a description of what is a platform clinical trial and how does it differ from a more traditional approach to clinical trials?
Well, a traditional clinical trial typically just answers a single question, and it represents a piece of one-off infrastructure to answer that question. In contrast, a platform trial can be regarded as any clinical trial in which multiple questions can be addressed, typically simultaneously, but also in sequence within a single trial protocol. And that creates some advantages.
So when you talk about multiple questions, we could ask multiple questions about one therapy, or the questions could involve different therapies. Can you clarify that a little bit for us?
Yes, I think this is a really important division among platform trials, between platform trials that address a single question but for which there are multiple alternative therapeutic options. In the parlance that I use, and nomenclature is still evolving in platform trials, I'd refer to that as a single domain platform trial. There are other platform trials which are multifactorial, so patients can receive assignments in two or more domains simultaneously.
And when you talk about a domain, what is a domain in the setting of a platform trial?
A domain represents a set of competing alternative interventions, alternative questions that are mutually exclusive options and so typically involve a single mode of therapy. In a multifactorial adaptive platform trial of pneumonia, alternative antibiotic treatment represents a single domain, whereas immune modulation therapy to modify outcome would be a different domain.
So the idea is you might make different choices for antibiotics, you might make different choices for immune modulators, and maybe different choices for some other therapy like ventilator settings. And each one of those would be a domain of therapy. Is that fair?
That's absolutely correct. And in the context of a multifactorial or multi-domain adaptive platform trial, there's the added advantage of being, at least theoretically, able to make some assessment of the interaction between treatments in different domains.
So, Steve, you're talking about the ability of a platform trial to examine potentially multiple different alternative treatments with a single goal, say in one domain or multiple different domains of therapy. What about the ability of a platform trial to be looking at different therapies during the conduct of that single trial over time?
So within a domain, if we can use that term, within a platform structure, it's quite feasible to start with an initial set of interventions that are being evaluated and then add additional interventions over time. That creates the advantage of much faster startup, which can be a significant issue in traditional trials because the new intervention is just introduced within existing infrastructure. Similarly, if adaptive design methods are utilized, it permits the ongoing assessment of the initial interventions that are being evaluated, and statistical conclusions can be reached, leading to, for example, the dropping of an inferior or futile intervention as the domain continues on over time.
So in this context, it sounds as if you're using the term adaptive to talk about the ability to add therapies for future investigation and to drop therapies based on how they're doing. Did I get that correctly?
Absolutely correct.
In your article, you also talk about the efficiencies of this approach and to a large extent, efficiencies relative to doing a series of separate trials looking at each of the therapies. And the efficiencies that you discuss, you divide into two categories, operational efficiencies and statistical efficiencies. So let's take those in order. So what are the operational efficiencies associated with this approach?
So the operational efficiencies are that a platform can be in many ways regarded as a piece of reusable infrastructure. the sites that are going to participate in the trial, the master protocol, the ethical and governance approvals, the data management system are all established once. But they can be used repeatedly to answer multiple questions as the questions within the platform evolve. And a substantial amount of the expense and time associated with generating randomized evidence is derived from that infrastructure. As I indicated earlier, that allows treatments to be started faster without the slow startup that is relatively common amongst traditional trial designs.
And I know that you and others have sometimes used a football stadium analogy to illustrate that. Can you explain that analogy for our listeners?
The analogy simply states that a traditional trial is like building a football stadium, playing one game on that stadium, and then completely dismantling the stadium at the end of the game. In contrast, a platform trial is a stadium that can host multiple games, different teams, even different sports.
So you also talk about statistical efficiencies, which you distinguish to some extent from operational ones. What are the primary statistical efficiencies associated with common platform trial approaches?
The statistical efficiencies can vary between platforms, but once there are multiple interventions within a domain, particularly if there's a common control group, there's automatically created statistical efficiency because two or more active interventions are being compared against a common control group, and that generates very substantial efficiency. If the platform design is combined with other types of adaptive design features like pre-specified statistical triggers, then there is no fixed sample size. Rather, each question is concluded as soon as there is sufficient statistical confidence, and that results in the most efficient use of available sample size.
One of the other advantages that you talk about in your article is the ability of the platform trial approach to address the potential differences of patients within the enrolled population, so called heterogeneity of the population or heterogeneity of the treatment effect. How does that work?
So I think this is perhaps one of the most important issues in trial science that has always existed as long as we've been doing trials, but it's only now gaining the attention that is needed. Populations of patients are heterogeneous. Every clinician knows that patients have differences. And in a clinical trial that measures the average treatment effect, if there's one subgroup that benefits from a treatment and another subgroup that is harmed by the same treatment, the average treatment effect is a null effect of the intervention. And I suspect that, at least in my discipline, in critical care, many effective treatments have been abandoned because of balancing a divergent treatment effect. One of the ways that this can be managed, and it can be done in traditional trials as well as it can be done in platform trials, is the creation of pre-specified subgroups, and then randomization is stratified by that subgroup, and it permits using appropriate statistical techniques to evaluate the independent treatment effect in each of those subgroups. If a Bayesian model is being used, there can be dynamic borrowing between those subgroups. So if there turns out to be no heterogeneity of treatment effect, the treatment effect can be estimated across both subgroups, generating additional statistical power. But if there is divergent treatment effect, then critically importantly to clinicians who will use that evidence, there's an independent estimate of treatment effect for each subgroup.
Given the possibility of achieving both operational and statistical efficiencies, it seems like this would be a very appealing approach. However, there must be situations where it isn't a good strategy, or there are concerns or limitations that need to be carefully considered. Can we start to go through those?
Sure. The first and I think most important thing to say is that if there's just a single question to be answered, nothing beats the traditional clinical trial. It creates unnecessary cost, expense, complexity to answer simple comparisons of A versus B within a platform structure. The central infrastructure that is necessary to support a platform trial is substantially larger and more expensive than a traditional trial. I used to think it was maybe double the cost of a traditional trial. Now I think it's more like 3 or 4 times as much as a traditional trial. And so there's some relationship between the number of questions that need to be answered within a platform and the corresponding increase in central costs before the break even point is reached where platform trials make sense. Platform trials have continual change. So, in comparison with a traditional trial, which is typically very static, there's a lot of operational and logistical challenge associated with managing the frequent change that occurs within a platform trial. That places much greater stress on the systems that are necessary to support the conduct of the trial. There are new amendments at sites as questions change. There's need for the data flow to be smooth and contemporaneous, and any breakdown in data flow can be devastating to a platform trial. There's also very substantial statistical complexity in platform trials, and the capacity and capability from a statistical side is still being built, although growing very rapidly. Statistically, valid causal inference is absolutely vital in every type of clinical trial. Because the interventions that are being evaluated change over time and other things can change in the background over time, outcomes can improve. Controlling for the effect of era or time on the results that are generated by a platform can require high quality statistical modification.
And just for completeness, can you describe for us exactly what is a non-concurrent control?
Well, a non concurrent control might be that there's a common control group within a platform trial that runs for many years, and new interventions are added over that time. If controls are used from the very beginning of the platform to compare with an intervention that perhaps only started 2 or 3 years into the platform trial, then those initial controls before the new intervention started are referred to as non concurrent.
Steve, your article is motivated by the series of publications in JAMA arising from the Healy ALS platform trial. Can you tell us a little bit about that example and why it's so notable?
So the first thing I want to say is I love this platform trial, Roger. I think it is superb and I think it's very much the way of the future, particularly in rare diseases. The Healy ALS platform enrolls patients with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a devastating progressive neurological condition for which there's urgent unmet need for better treatments. There's a very strong community of patients and advocates and family members within ALS. And this is a wonderful example of community driven combined with researcher and industry cooperation to create a platform that permits multiple different candidate treatments for ALS to be evaluated more cheaply and more rapidly than would be the case if independent traditional clinical trials were being conducted. It divides the treatments depending on the route of administration. Some treatments, as I recall, are enteral, some are administered by intravenous route, and it's a blinded trial in which only a small proportion of the patients, my recollection is around 25%, are assigned to control, and many more patients have the opportunity to receive an active intervention. Unfortunately, none of the initial treatments that were evaluated in the Healy ALS platform looked to be particularly exciting. I think some of them are still are having ongoing development, but the principle that was established should be that many treatments were evaluated at much lower cost and much faster than would have otherwise been the case.
Yes, I think one of the things that made the ALS platform trial appealing to participants was that by minimizing the allocation to the controls, they allowed each participant to have a 75% chance of getting an active experimental therapy, but maintained an adequate number of control patients by combining the control patients across each of the therapies that were being investigated. And that's nicely outlined in your article. So what is a shared control and how is it used in the Healy ALS platform trial?
A shared control is that within a domain, there may be multiple active interventions, but only one control group. So in the Healy ALS platform, patients were randomized across 3 active experimental interventions and compared to a single control group. For clinical trial participants looking for access to a novel or experimental therapy that might help their disease, this is a wonderful feature because it means that 75% of patients participating in the trial will receive an active experimental intervention.
So, Steve, what are the main points that our audience should take away from your article and from this podcast?
So I think, Roger, first of all, to understand that a platform trial is a piece of infrastructure that can evolve over time and it permits multiple treatments to be evaluated within that single piece of infrastructure. Secondly, platform trials are unequivocally more efficient, but there is a break-even point. There needs to be enough treatments within the platform to justify the additional expense and complexity that is associated with a platform trial. Lastly, the number of platform trials is growing incredibly rapidly, and I'm a big fan and a proponent of platform trials, but I do think that their true use is yet to be well established. There's an enormous amount of hype at the moment, and there are a lot of pitfalls and complexities associated with platform trials, and we'll only know their true place in generating evidence to improve clinical practice as time evolves.
I'm Roger Lewis, and I've been speaking with Steve Webb about platform clinical trials. This episode was produced by Shelley Stephens at the JAMA Network. You can find a link to the article in this episode's show notes. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com or search for JAMA Network wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
This content is protected by copyright by the American Medical Association with all rights reserved, including those for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies.